A couple of weeks ago, I made a video where I cooked up some trade packages for every single New Orleans Pelican amidst their rumored fire sale, where it appears that every single player on their roster was thrown onto the trading block. Well, now it appears that the Sacramento Kings may be the next team that's ready to blow it all up, as every single one of their players have been thrown into many recent trade rumors. So today, let's pull a Pat Riley and run it back as I show you how the Miami Heat can get every single Sacramento King. Because certainly, I think the Kings have a lot of good players. They're a good team. The problem is, being good in the Western Conference means you're just a play-in team, which is not surprising considering the Kings have decided to build their core around DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, who got the automatic annual invite to the Play-in Invitational back when they were with the Chicago Bulls. They are also two guys who have been heavily linked to Miami over the last several seasons, specifically DeMar DeRozan, who has 2 years left on his contract, making about $25 million a year. I don't think that's bad value, considering even at 35 years old last year, he still averaged a very efficient 22 points per game. So I do think he has some trade value because of his production, but it's probably not that high just considering his age at this point. This trade rumor was floated around a couple of days ago, where the Miami Heat get DeMar DeRozan and the Sacramento Kings get Terry Rozier and 2 second-round picks. From the Miami Heat perspective, I would have loved this when the Heat still had Jimmy Butler, because I think DeMar DeRozan could have helped Tyler carry the offensive load in the regular season, and then you would have Jimmy Butler to be the guy in the playoffs. So I think that dynamic could have worked out pretty well, because we know Jimmy likes to take a lackadaisical approach to the regular season, and we know DeMar doesn't have the best playoff reputation, so you kind of got one guy for the regular season, one guy for the playoffs, and I think it could have worked out pretty well. But right now, the Heat don't have a number one. They don't have a true guy that can be the best player on the championship team. I don't think DeMar DeRozan is that anymore. I'm unsure if he ever was. Of course, he had some really good teams in Toronto that got close, but they never actually won until Kawhi Leonard got there. That also could be because that's the year LeBron left the Eastern Conference. So I do wonder if that Raptors team maybe still could have made a playoff push with DeMar back then. But the point is, he's definitely not a 1A at this point of his career. And I don't see him as really a needle mover at all on this team, because I'm not even sure what his role would be. Like, would he be a sixth man? That doesn't sound right. DeMar DeRozan as a sixth man. But what are you going to do? You start next to Tyler, put Norman Powell off the bench. I guess you could do that too. But the overall point is, I really don't see the point in getting DeMar DeRozan right now. So I certainly wouldn't give up picks for him, nor do I want the extra year of his salary as opposed to Terry Rozier's expiring deal. If the Heat could somehow do this trade with no picks involved, I suppose I could be talked into it, because it's not like DeMar has a super long contract. His money would still be coming off the books along with Andrew Wiggins in 2027. So not next off season, but the one after that is when you would really just have a ton of cap space, which also seems like that could be the free agency where there's potentially some stars available. But of course, you never know, because guys are signing extensions left and right. It doesn't seem like 2026 offseason might be that great. So what's the harm in keeping your money on the books an extra year and having the cap space in 2027? So I could be talked into it with no picks. And then on the Kings' perspective, I don't think it's that bad for them at all either. They actually traded 2 second-round picks initially to get DeMar DeRozan in a sign-in trade. So this specific trade would just allow them to undo that. And when you trade for a 35-year-old, they're usually not an appreciating asset. Usually they lose value over time. So the fact that the Kings could overcome this mistake by basically breaking even, I don't think that's that bad for them. Plus, at this point, they would be shedding a year of salary since DeMar DeRozan makes an extra year's worth of money, so they could fully start their rebuild starting next season. Now, Zach LaVine's deal was once looked at as one of the worst contracts in the entire league because it had a massive value for several seasons. But now that a few years have passed, I don't actually think it's as bad anymore, because next season he'll be 30 years old, making about $47.5 million. And then the following season after that, he does have a player option worth about $49 million. Plus, his production really took a huge leap last year where he averaged 23 points per game, which is not close to his 27 point per game career high, but his efficiency was insane. Jumped all the way up to 51% from the field and 45% from three on 7 attempts. So he had a really great season last year after having a bit of a disappointing one the year prior. So maybe the Heat would be interested in something like this, where they receive Zach LaVine and the Sacramento Kings get Terry Rozier, Norman Powell, and 2 second-round picks. Both Terry and Norman are expiring contracts. We know the Miami Heat don't plan on bringing Terry back, and maybe they don't plan on resigning Norman Powell either. Maybe they don't think the money that he's requesting is something that they want to pay. So instead of losing him for nothing, at least you do get some value for him in this trade with Zach LaVine. Plus, Zach LaVine is a couple years younger also. So I don't want to act like Zach LaVine is super young. He's 30. But I think he has plenty of good years left in him still. He really doesn't rely on his athleticism as much as he once did. He's always been a really great shooter, although the efficiency that he had last year will come back down to earth a little bit. But overall, I think he's a clear upgrade over Norman Powell, although his fit with Tyler may actually be more questionable. But if you look at it like this, as basically, okay, the Heat traded Kevin Love, Kyle Anderson, Terry Rozier, and 2 second-round picks for Zach LaVine, former All-Star Zach LaVine, who just had arguably a career year last season. That's not bad value at all. Now, there are some questions regarding his contract because you don't know if he would accept that player option or not. It really depends on how well he performs and kind of what team salary cap situations are looking like with the new salary cap spike, which actually isn't as big as teams initially thought. So that can have an effect on whether LaVine accepts that player option or not. So you got a lot of questions there, but I think this is good value for the Miami Heat. For the Sacramento Kings, honestly, it's not great value, but I'm just not exactly sure what Zach LaVine's trade market is right now, because it wasn't that long ago where he was looked at as a negative asset. But his improved play, and now there's less years on his deal, those factors have upped his trade value a little bit. I just don't know how much, because at the end of the day, he's still making $47 million, which would be really hard for other teams to match, especially with expiring money. Because, of course, I don't think the Kings want to take on a bunch of long-term contracts for mediocre players. But in this case, the Heat actually have enough salary to match Zach LaVine's $47 million with expiring money. And, of course, that benefits the Kings because they would have all of that money come off the books next offseason. And then they don't have to worry about Zach LaVine's player option, whether he accepts it or not. So that's just another variable they don't have to worry about. And then maybe at the deadline, maybe they could flip Norman Powell for even more picks. Depends if he's having a strong season or not. I don't like the whole talk of Heat fans assuming you can flip Norman Powell for value, because he couldn't get flipped for value right now. Obviously, the Heat ended up getting him for no picks, so why would another team assume that you can flip him for picks at the deadline? But it's possible, because maybe there's a team who thinks they're a Norman Powell away from being a contender, so they may be able to, or may be willing to pony up a little bit more assets. So it's possible. Maybe the Kings in this case could flip Powell at the deadline for another second-round pick or 2. So if you remember, they actually got Zach LaVine in their De'Aaron Fox trade, which also included 3 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks. So it's possible that in totality, their full return for Fox could look something like 3 first-round picks and around 6 to 7 second-round picks. And that's really not that bad value for De'Aaron Fox, considering Fox had pretty much all the leverage because he refused to sign an extension with the Kings. Of course, DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine aren't the only members of the Kings core, because I would still argue that their best player is Domantas Sabonis. The 29-year-old is making a ton of money, where next season he'll be raking in $42 million, with $45 million the year after that. And then the following season, he'll be making $48 million at the age of 31 years old. It's a lot of money, but he is a statistical monster. Last season, he put up averages of 19 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 assists, shooting 59% from the field and 42% from three, and that was on 2 attempts per game. I know a lot of Heat fans may not love Domantas Sabonis because he's not a positive defender on or off ball, to put it nicely, but he is the best rebounder in the NBA, bar none. He actually led the league in rebounding the last 3 seasons and counting. And quite honestly, I'm just sick and tired of watching the Miami Heat get out-hustled on the glass every single night or just be too small to grab a rebound. Sabonis would more than fix that, and he provides the tough interior presence that I think the Heat are lacking. I know the floor spacing will be a concern for a lot of people as well, but it's not as bad as it once was. Like we just said, taking 2 threes a night last year, 42%, those are really, really good numbers. And if he could replicate anywhere near that shooting efficiency, I think a Bam and Sabonis front court would be deadly. You would have 2 bigs who could play make at a very high level, with Bam being arguably the best defender in the entire league, and then Sabonis being the best rebounder in the league. That sounds like a match made in nightmares for the opposition. That being said, this is probably the most I'd be willing to give up for him, in which the Miami Heat get Domantas Sabonis and the Kings get Andrew Wiggins, Norman Powell, 1 first-round pick, and 4 second-round picks. This would allow the Heat to have a core of Tyler Hero, Sabonis, and Bam, which alone might not make huge waves, but now Khalil Ware would be kind of expendable, and I do think that he still has tons of trade value. Plus, the Heat would still have a tradable first-round pick with multiple different avenues of creating more tradable first-round picks. So now you would have a very solid arsenal to go and get the next guy. Maybe it's Ja Morant or De'Aaron Fox. You know, Fox and Sabonis had some really fun teams in Sacramento, but didn't have much help outside of those 2 guys. But now you could potentially pair them with Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. And I really do think that core could be a contender in my eyes. As far as the Sacramento Kings, once again, this likely isn't enough value for them, but maybe they could be fooled by the former All-Star and Andrew Wiggins and near All-Star Norman Powell. And then the draft capital is kind of mid with only 1 first-round pick. So I'm not sure the Kings would do this deal. They certainly aren't in a rush to trade Sabonis because he still has 3 years left on his contract. But we're talking about the Sacramento Kings. So do not underestimate the level of stupidity that they're willing to go to, because they literally traded Tyrese Halliburton for Domantas Sabonis in the first place. And of course, Halliburton went on to be the best player in a finals team just a couple of years later. So I will say, though, I don't think Sabonis' trade value is as high as his stats would indicate, just because he really is that bad of defender, and he's making a ton of money. If you're making that much money in today's CBA, you kind of have to be a decent player on both sides of the ball. Sabonis is not that, but I do think that he could overcome his defensive inefficiencies just because they have Bam Adebayo, who'd be playing next to him, that can make up for a lot of that stuff. So I would like Sabonis' fit on the Miami Heat. Next, I want to talk about the Sacramento King, who has been in the most trade rumors recently, and that's Malik Monk. Heat fans are well aware about who Monk is because he quite literally may be the GOAT random scrub Heat killer. It's either him or Terrence Ross or Evan Fournier. You could throw Bryn Forbes in there. I don't know. There's a lot of guys. We've discussed it before. But Malik Monk may very well be the GOAT. Although since joining the Sacramento Kings, he's become much less of a scrub. He's actually been a perennial 6th man of the year type of player. So very good offensive player, averaging 17 points per game last year. But he shot 32% from 3. That's not really something that excites me. Even the 2 years prior, he's only been average at best from 3 and not really that efficient from the field overall. His counting stats have gone up the last 3 seasons, but the efficiency has gone down quite a bit, and that's just not the type of score that I want the Heat to get. You know, the Heat, they've already tried the whole trading for inefficient, high point per game, Charlotte Hornets guard thing. They tried that with Terry Rozier, and I really don't want to do that again. Plus, Monk has potentially 3 years left on his deal, as next year he's making about $19 million. The year after that, he's making $20 million. And then the year after that, at 29 years old, he'll be making $21 million. And the last year on that's a player option. That's a player option that I will 100% think that he would accept, because in today's day and age, shooters are not making that kind of money anymore. So I would say it's pretty safe to say Malik Monk has 3 years left on his contract. A trade like this works financially, at least, where the Miami Heat would be receiving Malik Monk and Keon Ellis, and the Sacramento Kings will be getting Terry Rozier and 1 second-round pick. I am interested in Keon Ellis. I'll say that at the very least, because I think he's a Heat culture type of guy. Excellent defender. He's only 25 years old, is a career 43% three-point shooter on increasing volume every single year. I think he's still highly underused in Sacramento, but I don't love the idea of giving up a pick or picks for Malik Monk and his long-term money. And honestly, the Kings would even want more value than I'm showing here. I don't even think the Kings would accept this deal. I guess nor would they accept most of the deals I showed in this video, at least. But who knows? Who knows what the Kings would do? I guess I just don't really love their players, or at least the value contracts of those players. So I don't love the Malik Monk one, but if they could somehow get Keon Ellis, I think he'd be a good piece for the Heat. And the last guy I want to talk about is Devin Carter, who's been in the rumor mill a lot as well. Of course, he's the son of former Heat player and recent assistant coach Anthony Carter, and Heat fans, including myself, have loved Carter ever since he came into the draft just last year, and that's for his defensive tenacity and exceptional rebounding from the guard position. Last year, he had a injury-riddled rookie season due to a couple of shoulder injuries. Didn't really put up any notable counting numbers, only played 36 games, about 11 minutes a night, but he did actually lead the Kings in net rating in his limited time. I do think that's noteworthy. Then also, this past Vegas Summer League had a relatively impressive one. Even had a game where he had a 30-point outburst on 10 of 13 shooting versus the Bulls. So we know he can defend, and he has shown the ability to be a pretty decent scorer as well. So considering the Kings just drafted him a year ago at 13th overall, he was a lottery pick, and now, he's played well through Summer League. I have no idea why the Kings would want to trade him, but as a Heat fan, I'm interested. Now, admittedly, this trade is also stupid, where the Heat are receiving Devin Carter, and they're sending over Haywood Highsmith and a second-round pick to the Sacramento Kings. But I have no idea what Carter's trade value is around the league, considering his injury history and lack of pro game film. I don't think he'll ever be the sole player in a trade, at least not coming into his sophomore season. He's more likely to be a sweetener in a deal to get off Malik Monk or someone else. But I just wanted to show this trade with him alone, just to kind of highlight his valuable rookie scale contract, which he's making very little money for 3 seasons. It starts out at $5 million next year. It goes up as high as, I think, like $7 million in the last year of his deal. And if Devin Carter can continue performing at the level that he did, at least in Summer League or close to that, I think being on that small rookie contract is very valuable. Obviously, he's a little bit of an older player, so he is a guy that can play right now. And it's just a great value contract. So I just wanted to show this trade just to kind of state how much I still love Devin Carter. And if the Kings are willing to get off of him, if the Heat can get him for peanuts, I think that's something I would do just to bring him into our young core. I think he'd be a good piece to fit with everyone else. And he could learn under Davion Mitchell, who's still pretty young too. But just imagine you got this dog defensive backcourt, Davion starting, bring Devin Carter off the bench. It's like the other teams could never take a breath. And I could love the idea of that. The actual final trade I cooked up is my real favorite one, in which the Miami Heat receive Isaiah Stevens and in return send the Sacramento Kings Terry Rozier and 6 first-round picks. Now, of course, I'm joking, kinda, although I would love to have Isaiah Stevens back, especially over Terry Rozier, because it's a damn shame that Stevens didn't get more playing time last year. He only played about 3 games. I don't even think he scored. And meanwhile, the Heat were desperate for a true facilitator. They had one on their team as Stevens, but he couldn't play. They were playing bum-ass Terry Rozier. Why? I don't know. But it's a shame the things didn't work out with Isaiah Stevens. Hopefully, he could carve himself out a nice career, currently being on the Sacramento Kings. But in all seriousness, the only other relevant players that we didn't discuss is Heat legend Dennis Schroeder. If y'all remember, he was on the Heat for like 4 seconds after we traded Jimmy Butler, and then Schroeder was like rerouted to Toronto, and then he ended up in Detroit. Who the hell remembers? He had a good season last year, the Kings were stupid to overpay him, but he's on the Kings now. They just got him. I don't think they're going to trade him right away. And then the only other really relevant player that we didn't mention is Keegan Murray, who's had a couple of down seasons from an efficiency standpoint after a really great rookie season. And while I would value him on the Miami Heat, I think the Kings value him even more. And I do believe they look at Keegan Murray to be a part of their future. So, of course, a lot of things can change with the Sacramento Kings. Right now, they appear to be the favorites to sign Russell Westbrook, which would even further signal that they may want to offload Malik Monk or Devin Carter. And also, they're still pretty heavily involved in the Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade market. So maybe some of the pieces we discussed in today's video could eventually go back to the Warriors in a Kuminga deal. But that's all I got to say for this video. So we mentioned a lot of trades today, talked about a lot of players. I'm very curious to hear which one of these you like the best. So make sure to leave your comments down below on who you'd want to see the Miami Heat targets. Also, make sure to like the video and subscribe because I'm on the grind to hit 9,000 subs. And I'll see you on the next video. Peace out, everyone.
Look, pull up in your city tryna get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.